All right, we have Ryan on today who spent the last 5 years helping new entrepreneurs launch their recruiting firm. Ryan, let's get right to it. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey.
Absolutely, Todd. I've got a rather powerful and heartwarming journey that I'd like to tell you about today. So hopefully you guys know I'm the owner of sevenfigurestaffing.com. I focus on helping recruiting entrepreneurs compete with the well-established, polished agencies out there. So it's kind of like you could call it a David and Goliath type thing. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the way that I started in recruiting, I started in a small firm that had, a really good group of core recruiters that I really enjoyed learning from. But I noticed early on, there was a lot of turnover outside of that core. And the reason for that turnover, I'm sure you guys have noticed this, the reason was basically that recruiting is actually pretty hard. So, it's easy to get into because there's no real barrier to entry, right? But it's hard to stick. And so, it's hard to become a top performer quickly. But for myself, I was bound and determined to see my name on the top of that money-making leaderboard that they would always publish. So through that journey, I actually became known, and this is a true story, by the way, I became known as the office sponge. The office sponge.
Sexy.
Yeah, when I say it out loud, it doesn't sound that flattering.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, I don't even I'm thinking of like my sponge in the kitchen sink, and I'm like, ew.
I took it as a compliment at the time. The owner actually said, he said to me in a meeting, Ryan, you're like a sponge. Anything we say and do, you somehow are able to absorb it and put it into practice. So long story short, I was this sponge for a while. I became obsessed with learning everything that I could, and like setting the recruiting world on fire, so to speak. And lo and behold, my name did shoot up to the top of that leaderboard pretty quickly. And so once I realized or kind of thought there wasn't much more to learn, I decided, okay, it's time to start my own business. And I've got to admit, there was another factor in there as well. And that factor is I got tired of baking a whole pie, but only being able to eat a small fraction of it in commissions. Okay. I started to realize I wanted to keep that whole pie, not just 30% of it. My family loves pie. You guys probably like pie.
I love pie. Pie's great.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It's that season, right?
Yep.
So I needed to keep the whole pie, and so I started my own firm. It was quite an adventure. It took off very, very quickly. I managed to hit on a winning niche. I found out early on, though, we were on pace for 7 figures in sales. I found out that nonetheless, somehow my business was actually worth $0 at that time. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs find this out, and it's a big shock when you learn that. So I became obsessed with making my business worth something. So I'm going to tell you guys what I did. Are you guys ready for this?
Yes.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so what I did is I put a bunch of processes in place. I hired a bunch of people, and then I went golfing for most days. And then I went on vacation for 6 months. So.
How did that work? Like,
yeah.
was it effective? Like, were the people?
Well, here's the thing. So I say that kind of like as a joke, but the thing is, if you want to have a valuable business, the business can't rely on you, right?
Really,
you have to get yourself out of the day-to-day operations of that business. So that's what I did. So while I was on vacation, I guess, word got out that my business was getting fairly scalable. And so I actually started getting offers for purchase that were becoming hard to turn down. And one of the reasons it was so hard to turn down is largely because, you know, I knew at that point that I could basically duplicate that process again and build another business just like it. So sooner or later, you know, I just couldn't turn down those offers anymore. I actually sold the business while I was traveling with my family. And so now I'm here to, you know, telling my story, teaching others about how to thrive in the wonderful world of recruiting. I've got a bit of an academic flair, so I set about making courses and coaching programs that have done really well, and they seem to be helping a lot of people, and it's a lot of fun. So in short, if I was to recap all of that, basically the formula is sponge to pie to golfing to vacation, and that's how you make a successful recruiting business.
I feel like that's a wrap. We're good. Everyone understands. They're good to go. But actually, okay, let's dive deeper into this. So what are some of the key features and aspects that you really teach in your courses, like that really helps an entrepreneur get started and get their business growing?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, in my courses, the way recruiters typically find me is, like I was explaining to you guys earlier, they'll take one of my theory courses on udemy.com. I've got a few courses specifically on starting up your own recruiting business. I've gotten consistently great feedback on those. And then, you know, for folks that are really serious, I've got more premium courses that have actual demonstration. So these are more kind of behind the scenes, or I like to call it over the shoulder courses. These folks can actually watch me on the phone with real clients and candidates. They can watch me setting up marketing funnels. They can even sit in on coaching sessions with seven-figure staffing students. And the reason I made those programs is because, you know, although theory courses teach a lot, and many folks are able to just kind of take them and run with them, a lot of times people have more specific questions, right? They want to be you know, extra spongy, just like I was. And so, and then from there, I also have like these two different coaching programs I offer. One is the Coach on Call program, where recruiters and entrepreneurs can access me basically whenever they want.
Oh, that's
and
so
the
handy.
other one, yeah, and the other one is more of a done with you program, where my team and we actually roll up our sleeves. We're going to help you build the infrastructure and the process and the marketing funnels and just get it all launched properly or turned around, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Ryan, I want to go back in your story when you launched your own. Like, what? So many people have trouble scaling, you know what I mean? And like actually getting employees in. So what do you think, what is it about you that helped you do that? You know what I mean? Because a lot of people do struggle doing that, like actually building in the processes and everything else.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was it goes back to the sponginess. It really is an education thing, and understanding that, like I said, the business can't rely on you, right? You have to have processes in place. You have to have ways of doing things that are duplicatable.
They're teachable.
Teachable. You know, I use this analogy a lot. You know, if you go through the drive-through at McDonald's, you're not going to be too upset if your favorite drive-through worker is not there. If that person leaves or they get sick, they're just going to put another person in there, right? And so, in a sense, you actually have to have that sort of Starbucks / McDonald's type franchisable model, so that you can just kind of slot people in, and there's an infrastructure there where they can come in and pick up the pieces, and your business can continue to grow, you know, whether or not you're there.
So it sounds like you're actually really good at like breaking down the processes, like the actual steps that will help people not only just start, but then also grow. Because you're really looking at, how can I remove myself from this puzzle? And in order for me to remove myself from this puzzle, these have to be really trainable, actionable steps.
Yeah, that's so true, Kate. Like you have to do that because, I mean, let's face it, like people are not, nobody's going into business so they can make a harder job for themselves,
No
right?
thanks. Right. Yeah. We want like financial freedom. We want time freedom. We want the idea of like, I'm going to go, I don't play golf, but like maybe you want to play golf, or like, I'm going to
Yeah.
travel. I do love traveling, you know, like that kind of life. Like we have this vision of what we want to head to. And it's not, I'm chained to my computer and I'm
Yeah.
working more hours than I've ever worked in my life.
Yeah, so unfortunately, that's just not the experience that a lot of entrepreneurs have when they do this. They get into it for the freedom, and what happens is, you know, the opposite result happens. You know, if you're not careful, if you don't know about this in the first place, and like I told you, I was shocked when I was told that my business, which was making money, was worth nothing. So they're shocked when they get in there and they actually have 4 jobs instead of 1, or 5 jobs instead of 1. And then you're like, okay, well, how do I get out of this hamster wheel type thing?
So do you use automation? Do you use VAs? That just, when you were saying that, I suddenly just flashed to like one of like a recruiter's problem, which is like generating leads, following up with leads, like finding a way to make it easier for themselves.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, no question. I kind of mentioned, you've got to have your marketing funnels in place. I'm a big proponent of having a marketing machine going for you, you know, running for you in the background. I know that cold calling is not very trendy right now, as you guys may have heard from some of your other guests.
Yeah. Also not, I'm just not really a fan. So.
Right. But even if you're good at cold calling, like it's still, you know, it's still powerful, it's still effective. And even if you're good at it, well, if you are good at it, then guess what's going to happen? You're going to get too busy to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course you want to have a marketing machine running for you in the background, and you want to diversify away from that cold calling in any event, because like you said, there aren't too many people who like doing it. I've heard of a couple of people say they like it. I don't know if I believe them, but
I know a handful, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always just used it more to like get on the phone with somebody. Like,
Yeah.
I just want you to like, actually, let me correct that. I use it more to get a response to an email. Like, I just want you to respond to my email. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, Ryan, what are some of your favorite go-tos on the marketing side? I mean, we've talked to a lot of people and they have a lot of different approaches when they're trying to systemize marketing. So I'm curious kind of, you know, what your thought process is behind, or, you know, kind of what channels you like to make sure are covered.
Yeah, well, just going back to the new entrepreneur thing, you know, one of the key issues that new entrepreneurs have to think through in this industry is basically answering the following question, which is, why would a good client choose to work with little old me, right?
Mm-hmm.
My little agency, over all the more well-established competitors? As you can imagine, like everybody's going to struggle with this. So, you know, the starting point, the easiest way to deal with this is to shrink your pond, right? You've got to be the biggest fish, and you basically want to have almost no competitors in your pond. So I'm a big proponent of finding, you know, somewhat unique niches and niching down as much as you can. I'm a big believer that a good niche is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you when it comes to marketing. The last thing you want to be doing, Todd, is competing on price, right? That's never a fun game, because you're basically playing the game of who can sacrifice more pie. And you know me, I don't play that game. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is really interesting. Give me an example of some niches that you've liked, because I know when you ran yours, or students that you've had that you're like, oh, this is interesting, because that's a really smart approach. So like, you know, my question was, what type of marketing, and your response is, before you even worry about the marketing, pick something that it's going to differentiate just based off that. Like it's going to give you more lift. So yeah, I'm interested.
Well, I think of that as marketing. I think of picking your niche as marketing, because your niche is in my opinion, going to do a lot of the heavy marketing lifting for you. It's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So your niche is very important for marketing. And to answer this follow-up question of yours, when I say a good niche, I don't mean like just choosing out of like one of the big categories, right? Like IT
Right.
or healthcare or finance. And the reason for that is those are saturated niches. Even though they are technically niches, declaring yourself as a specialist in one of these big categories is really just the same as being a generalist. It's not really helping you in your marketing, because you still do have a whole bunch of competitors and your pond is still too big. But if you say, I specialize in cloud, or I specialize in artificial intelligence or data science or psychiatric or fund managers, basically any sort of unexploited and high potential sub niche, then you might be onto something.
Yeah, I had someone I know, or I have someone that I know that focuses on executives in the parking lot industry.
Wow.
Never would have thought thriving business, because it's just a small pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, sometimes you're just in a good region or locale, and you're going to notice a pocket of companies just like that. This is exactly what happened with my business. Is I noticed this pocket of companies that were more or less in the same industry, and it was a sub niche, and I started marketing to those folks, and I started kind of playing them off each of their with their competitors and that kind of thing. And it was a great business. It was a great business.
Yeah, I'm curious if you hit this. Sometimes I find when people focus on a niche, once they've got a couple contracts with a couple companies, let's say there's 150 companies in that space, and they're working with 10 or 15 of them, they need places to pull the candidates from. Like it's hard to have contracts with all of them. So I'm wondering if that's something that you ran into, or did you just find it like, look, man, it was big enough that once we got 10% of it or 15% of it, like we're good to go.
So your question is like, is it difficult to have a big enough candidate pool to
because in
service
niche,
that niche? Is that right?
Yeah, service that niche, and then also you can't be pulling from your own clients. So,
right.
Yeah. So did you get to a point that you had contracts with like all of them? It's like
pretty much. But the old adage, Todd, if they don't buy, they supply. So, some of them are not going to buy from you, and
then you just like picked, you're like, I will just take your people.
Yeah. That goes back to recruiting. I mean, that goes back to basically fundamental recruiting skill. And if I could just say a word on that, which is, if recruiters are spending all of their time in the interview situation, just trying to screen candidates and figure out if they're good for their job, that's not totally a best use of your time. Mm-hmm. A lot of that time in that interview should be spent getting the candidates that are in the heads of those candidates. Okay. So your best candidates are not going to be on the internet, right? Especially when you're talking about certain niches like the industrial or manufacturing space. I'm sure you guys know this. Mm-hmm. These are not people that necessarily have the most up-to-date resumes. They're not spraying them out. They're not on social media. The best way to find them is they're in the heads of the people you bring into your office or the people you talk on the phone with. So a lot of that time that you spend with candidates has to be spent uncovering those, basically mining for information. Okay. That's got to be part of your process. Is you have to basically help those candidates lead you to more candidates.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds simple when you say, oh, you got to get referrals, but it's not as simple as just saying, hey, do you have any referrals? It's more like making it a fundamental and almost mandatory part of your process, is getting almost like filling in an org chart for every relevant competitor that is out there, so that you know who is where, who's in what department, and basically none of your competitors or the other agencies are going to have that information. So it really, distinguishes you from the other recruiters.
Yeah. Do you cover this in one of your courses? And if so, which one?
You know what? That's a great question. I have a new course coming out actually next week, which is called 11 Steps to Master the Art of Recruiting. And I'm all over that point specifically in that course.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kate.
No, I was just going to say, you're right. Like sometimes when you get niched down in a specific area, sometimes your candidates are not online. And it is like, I mean, I've done things like literally calling other places just to like get present and get connected, because it's like so valuable.
Yeah, that reminds me, Kate and I did a niche of junkyards.
Mm-hmm.
So nice.
Just like automotive recycling and finding general managers, COOs, VP of ops for this very not sexy. None of them are on any of the platforms.
Middle of nowhere.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no social media like Skillshare. I remember they had, or what was it called? There was a something like LinkedIn, but it was supposed to be for like, more blue collar workers in the past, and or skill pages, something like that.
Yeah, we literally use Google Maps. Like we would Google the junkyards
and call them.
Right.
Yeah, call them.
Because it's just like not even everyone's like, oh, I'm doing IT recruiting. I'm like, yeah, you sound sexy, and our junkyard recruiting doesn't sound sexy, but it is. There's nobody playing in it. I mean, maybe after this call, more people will consider.
They'll be like suddenly like, oh, all the junkyards, hit them up. Yeah.
I like the sound of that niche. That sounds good.
Yeah. It's actually a really cool one. Yeah. And there are not a lot of, I wouldn't say there are a lot of recruiters in that area right now. Like, it's not something.
Yeah, it also wasn't some brilliant, move. Like I had a CEO refer me to another CEO, and they were like, I'm in this biz, and I'm like, nobody's playing in this space. Like, this will be interesting.
That's how you find a good niche. You want a space and nobody is playing in. Like you want to give justification to your contact for why they should work with you. Like I always think like your contact has a boss, right? You got to make it easy for them to justify why they're working with you. I like to picture like your contact might be meeting with the director and say like, a quarterly review, and they're going to review the vendors that they decided to work with. And if the director says, why did you choose to work with XYZ recruiting company, or maybe they have to get clearance from that individual in the first place, like you got to make it easy for them to have an answer there. Typically, especially for clients of mine who are a little newer to the industry, typically the answer is not going to be, why did you choose to work with that recruiting company? It's not going to be, because of their reputation. It's not going to be because they're the biggest. It's not going to be because they like the sound of their voice. Hopefully it's not because they bought them tickets to a basketball game. It's got to be because the specialty is a unique match, right? That's so much easier for them to justify than really anything else. Like what else would they use? Especially if you're new to the business, what else are they going to use to justify working with you? Like I say, you got to make it easy for them.
Yeah. Follow up on that. I always say, part of my job is to make them look good, like it's, of course it's to execute well, but it's like, CYA, making them look good. The niche thing, how do you, when you talk about that, what's the framework, or how do you kind of help? Let's say you have someone new and they're trying to figure it out. Do you talk to them about their strengths? Do you talk to them about doing research? Or do you have a course that covers it? And if so, which one?
Well, it's largely about testing. I am not in favor of people just assuming that they've got a good niche, right? And that tends to be what a lot of people do is they try to they'll get into a lot of red tape, right? They'll say, okay, I've got a niche idea and I'm going to get started on this business. And what happens is they start out with all of this red tape rather than testing their niche. And I actually have I'm trying to look for it here because I have a chap who sent me, here it is. Yeah. So I've got an email conversation from the other day, which is a perfect case in point. This guy, he emailed me, he said, I'm starting a hybrid staffing company. I think he said he was pairing it with a clinical research company. He said he needs to file for his business license. He said he needs to get his affairs in order. And by the time everything is ready, he should be all set to launch by spring of 2022.
Wait, what?
And I was like, wow. I was thinking to myself, why not launch right now?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why not launch this week? And if you're paying attention, there are a couple other red flags there in that message, like the hybrid thing. I can't tell you how many people come to me saying that they're opening a hybrid company. And I just want to tell your audience right now, guys, please don't do that. Trust me when I say it's hard
Please
enough
don't.
to start. Yeah, it's hard enough to start one company, let alone two at once. Unless you're already at the golfing vacation stage, then you're good to go. But anyways, I emailed this guy back and I said, hey, what are these affairs that you're trying to get in order? Because I was curious, what's holding him back from starting? What's with pushing it to 2022? And he said, well, I'm building a really expensive website. It's a slow process. I'm writing a business plan, applying for funding, trying to get registered with some kind of nonprofit, jumping through hoops. He actually used that term. The list was endless. And, I didn't want to be rude, but I was just like, dude.
Don't do any of that.
No, none of that is step one, right? Step one is getting traction. Mm-hmm. I believe step one is getting traction. We need traction first. We need a minimum viable product. So we need to have a somewhat tested idea. This goes back to the niche. You need to know that your niche is tested and somebody wants it. Somebody has to want these people. Sometimes you can test an idea in a couple of minutes, right? And this goes back to phone calls. Phone calls are very, very good for that. I'm not saying we have to spend an eternity cold calling, but I'll just give you an example. One time when I was starting up my recruiting business, I called into one of the largest architectural building companies in my area and just asked them if they would be interested in some workers with a particular skill set that I had some insight into believing they needed. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to test it out. These guys had experience in their industry, or that's what I was saying. And I dropped the name of a well-known competitor. So it was a pretty simple little pitch, right? Just a simple little pitch. And guess what he said to me?
Yeah, if you got some.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I want to meet with you tomorrow morning. That's what he said. So that's traction, right? This guy had a real need. He could see very quickly that I knew what he wanted. and he became a huge client. Now, like, I'm not saying you necessarily have to get a huge client before you build a website, but what I am saying is you need to have buying indicators before you get too crazy with all this stuff. So yeah, so my message for the folks at home is, just don't jump through hoops. Don't go applying for funding. There's really no need for funding apart from payroll funding anyway. Don't do all kinds of crazy tire spinning before you have traction in the form of buying indicators. And in terms of what a buying indicator is, it just means, you strike a chord with a real prospect. They seem to be interested in the types of people that you're claiming to have. So if you can get those indicators, then you might be on your way to justifying jumping through some of those hoops, doing the red tape. But, me personally, and it sounds like you guys as well, I wouldn't be doing any of those hoops before that stuff.
No way. Ryan, this has been so incredibly valuable. I know you have a free gift for our audience. Would you share with them what that is?
Yeah. So if your audience heads over to sevenfigurestaffing.com/free resources, I've actually got 3 free resources there. So they're going to get my startup traction playbook. So it's going to help them know, what plays to run in their new recruiting business and in what order. They're also going to get my marketing blueprint, which is going to help them to diversify away from cold calling through the use of digital marketing funnels. And then they're also going to get my handy advice on pricing objections, which is really good for handling prospects who get sticker shock when you tell them your fees, right? So I would recommend checking out. It's got a few scripts and gambits in there. And that's it. So sevenfigurestaffing.com/free resources.
Ryan, that's so incredibly valuable. We're going to make this even easier. Just scroll down, guys, click the button. It'll take you straight there so you can sign up and get these incredible offers. And then, Ryan, what's the number one thing you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, so the number one thing is, don't wait to start your business. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be a perfect economy. The heavens are not going to open up and call your name and tell you your destiny. So you might as well just start right now. Once upon a time, I was afraid to start my own business. And then what I did is I had a heart-to-heart with myself and I analyzed what was truly causing that fear. And what I realized through that exercise is that I was actually fearing having to go back to my present condition. So in other words, I was fearing having to get a job again, right? Meanwhile, here I had a job already, which I wasn't, which it wasn't really what I was looking for. So really it didn't make any sense. The fear was completely irrational. So the moral of the story is get out there, be a sponge, eat the whole pie, take a vacation. But before you do all that, check out sevenfigurestaffing.com.